All right. Senator Corbett.
I just have another sort of technical question about the diversion. In looking at the bill on page 18, AB 80, page 18, line 1, discussing the unauthorized diversion, I think it would be very clear in reading this bill to someone if the governor has issued a proclamation that no diversion shall occur. But there's other language at line 25-26 that might be a little more difficult for someone to understand, that this is the time frame where an unauthorized diversion may occur. And I'm speaking to the language that says the diversion occurs in a critically dry year immediately preceded by 2 or more consecutive below normal dry or critically dry years. And then it goes on to say, or when the governor has the proclamation of emergency. So during the previous sentence, will there be some sort of statement, though, that we are now in the period of time that diversions shall not occur? Obviously, when the governor makes a proclamation, everybody knows what that means. But the other definition, there might be people who don't realize, unless there's some sort of statement, we are now in the non-diversion period.
Sure. And the way that I expect that this authority, some of the authority with respect to what constitutes a drought that triggers the enhanced authority for the Water Board is in existing law. However, it had not carried with it heightened penalties in the past. Within the board system, we're going to work to make sure that folks are aware when we see a year shaping up as a critically dry year and it's following 2 consecutive below normal dry or critically dry years, to get the information out. I mean, already at that point in time, I expect the Department of Water Resources and its Save Our Water campaign is going to be in full swing, because we're going to be in a bad state of affairs to trigger this to begin with. But we'll make sure the information gets disseminated.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Corbett. Senator Berryhill.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for everybody for showing up today. Sorry I'm late, Mr. Chairman. I was briefed on your opening comments and was encouraged in that this is, I think everybody understands that there's no water in these bills. This is just a Band-Aid, kind of a fixed temporarily. And we're certainly, the $687 million in the bills we have in front of us today will provide some relief for the communities and families in the Central Valley. That's a really good thing and something that should be done. Shovel-ready projects for water conservation, emergency drinking, water, food, housing, that list goes on forever, all make sense during this critical time. But what really makes sense is a long-term solution. These bills provide at best a small Band-Aid on a serious problem that has existed for years. Farmers and farm workers would much rather be working and not getting assistance. I guess the bottom line here is that we need a real plan that increases water storage for the state of California, and I know a lot of folks are working on that, including myself right now. Every Californian has a responsibility to do their part to conserve water, but it is only Mother Nature that can make it rain. And we could have planned for this emergency by having built new storage a long time ago. We just didn't get it done. Instead, we are facing yet another crisis that is putting more and more people out of work. In Mendota, for example, in the last drought that we recently had, there was about 40% unemployment in Mendota back in the day. They're talking in that neck of the woods today, in this drought, of 50 and 60% unemployment. And that is unconscionable. And we need to do something to get these folks working again in sustainable jobs. I am ready and am working with the governor and legislative Democrats on the details of this proposal. But calling these proposals drought relief is a little bit misleading. More water storage, that is the real drought relief that we do need moving forward. So with that, and again, I'm a little bit late, but this is for Department of Finance, and I think we've been through this before, but I'm going to ask you again. AB 79 contains $40 million in funding for cap and trade allowance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. While these projects will increase water conservation, which is a good thing, it is very unclear whether any reductions in greenhouse gas emissions will materialize. So just as I have said during our previous hearings about cap and trade revenues, since the purpose of AB 32 is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, my question to you is, How many metric tons of GHG will be eliminated with these projects? Do you have any idea?
Matt Alme, Department of Finance. Because we don't know what the projects are going to be yet, it's going to have to go through a grant process. We don't necessarily have the metrics at this point to say how many emissions would be reduced. What I could tell you is that as an example of a type of project that would be eligible, a lot of water gets pumped from the Northern California down to Southern California, and that necessitates energy use. So you take a project in Southern California that is a water conservation project that would save, so many acre feet of water. That means that would be that amount of water less that would have to be pumped from the north, which would generate energy savings and therefore would result in greenhouse gas emission reductions. So these types of projects are multi-benefit, so to speak, in that it simultaneously at the same time would result in emission reductions that further the purpose of AB 32, which is consistent with the requirements of the use of cap and trade funds, and would also result in water savings as well. So it serves both purposes.
So the bottom line is we really don't know just exactly how many emissions we are going to help out on here.
At this point, because the projects haven't been identified yet. Now, having said that, one of the requirements under the cap and trade expenditure plan is that there is an annual report to the legislature every year once the expenditures are made that reports on what the outcomes of those projects are. So consistent with the existing requirements that are already in place, it is absolutely the administration's intent to have full accountability and transparency about what types of projects the cap and trade funds have been used for and what those outcomes are. And we intend to do that.
Can we expect some numbers after everything's been identified and done so we kind of know what we have or haven't done here?
Yes, once the projects are identified, we would have those numbers.
Because, listen, I don't know about the rest of my caucus today. I'm going to be voting for both these bills. This was a long negotiated settlement. I know with our water guys, we're there with the governor's office a long time yesterday, and they're okay with this. So I will be voting for it. But, I think that we got to stay vigilant here as we move forward. And AB 32 is just an excuse. We've almost figured a way to print new money for the state of California. And these are very well intentioned and much needed. But as we move forward, we've got to quantify what we're getting bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Berryhill. I suspect Mr. Alme will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the largest sector of energy consumption is the movement of water. And so any water efficiency project is going to have energy efficiency benefits to it.
I guess I might clarify. I think the largest sector is transportation, but the largest user is the State Water Project. One entity, the largest entity would be the State Water Project, is my understanding.
I thought transportation was the largest greenhouse gas emitter.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I stand corrected.
So, but again, your response to Senator Berryhill was
Yes.
accurate. We're going to have energy efficiency as we have water efficiency.
And also to just maybe underscore the point, there is language in this bill that puts more belts and suspenders on this, in that before the cap and trade funds can be spent, we would notify the legislature in terms of providing a record for how these expenditures would further the purpose of AB 32.
Very good. Colleagues, any more questions on either AB 79 or AB 80? We thank you all. Senator Bell, sorry. Please proceed.
Oh boy, I've been in a lot of meetings today, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend the entire hearing, but I did have a question, Mr. Chairman. Do the department, under the section related to food assistance, does the Department of Social Service have the discretion to directly contract with nonprofit organizations directly that can provide emergency food assistance to low-income migrant and seasonal farm workers? Is that allowed under the legislation? I notice we have in AB 79. It's on page 34. I wanted to get this clear.
Yes, the authority does exist, and I think our response related to food and rental assistance is going to be very dependent on the resources in the community that serve the farm working community there, and so there may be a slightly different looking delivery model in different communities depending on the presence of nonprofits, especially, but also government organizations.
I'm looking for the department to have discretion to be able to make those choices and
they do,
act in an emergency fashion directly to these organizations.
Yeah, they do, and they do have regularly used the network that exists when responding to emergencies.
And then in terms of that's AB 79. In terms of AB 80, the rental assistance amount, Mr. Chairman, I think both these sections, I view it as an initial amount of money, but I honestly believe that this is a pittance for what I think we're going to have to spend on food, shelter, other needs to help people from going hungry or being without a home and in need of keeping in their home and not losing their home. So I think down the road, I like to have these two particular areas because they're so life-sustaining, carefully monitored so we can see if the money is used wisely. I was concerned in both these sections of how much overhead money would be allowed. Is there going to be a limit on the amount of administrative overhead expenses allowed, or is this money going to go directly to low-income migrant farm workers and other low-income residents that need this emergency assistance? How are you going to watch and control that?
So we have a drought task force that is tasked with responding to the drought situation, and we'll be carefully monitoring the administrative overhead. I think that's one of the reasons why we want to tap into the existing delivery systems that exist in these communities that already serve many people in the community, and to just build on their operations as opposed to creating a standalone delivery system.
So we'll be working with nonprofit housing organizations that directly work with providing emergency housing, farm worker housing, emergency assistance to migrant farm workers and seasonal workers that will be directly impacted by the drought.
We're working hard to not have a one-size-fits-all response, understanding there's different resources in different communities, and it is my understanding that we will be working very diligently with the community organizations that exist.
Are we going to track the amount of homelessness that occurs as the drought proceeds? Are we going to have an idea of the level of homelessness and hunger that occurs? Is that going to be monitored and tracked by any way by the state?
We're working hard to collect information on the drought impacts in general, and so that's something that we've already started doing in terms of going out and doing workshops around the state, but also UC Davis has been contracted to do a study about the impacts of the drought on communities and farmland. So we are doing our best to collect information from various sources on the impacts of the drought, and I think that would include, an understanding of the housing situation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking questions about this in terms of poverty, and people in poverty are on the precipice of homelessness and risks of hunger and worse conditions. So I think with the drought added to those already bad situations in a social context, that we have an obligation, a moral obligation, and obligation as a state of California to closely monitor that. And I'd like to have updates in this committee, if it's a pleasure of the chair, to see what kind of conditions are existing out there regarding the vulnerable populations that could be affected by the drought.
Thank you, Senator Bell. I suspect that your own subcommittee will be digging deeper into some of these very issues when you get to your hearing on March 27th. And also wanted to underscore that you're not the only senator who's expressed concerns with the dollar amounts that are before us today, and that this is just our first allocation. I am confident, hopefully, with more rain, with more snow, we'll be back fewer times than otherwise, but certainly we will be back with further allocations later in the year. So any other questions? Otherwise, we will get...
Are you ready for a motion yet, Mr. Chair?
Certainly happy to take a motion.
I'm glad to make a motion on AB, or is it AB 79?
As amended?
As amended.
Okay. We also have some public comment.
Oh, yes, of course.
So if folks are able, we'll listen to our public comment and then take our vote. And Senator Corbett will take your motion for AB 80 as well as amended. Anyone else not in line who may be thinking of speaking? You want to raise your hand, or is it everyone who's up? Yes, and this is public comment on both 79 and 80. All right, so if you could keep your comments no more than a couple minutes, we'd appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members of the committee, Kathy Cole with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Clearly, we are in unprecedented territory with this drought. Strategic funding for the drought relief programs can certainly lessen the impacts, and the proposals before you are very important first steps to making that happen. Expediting the flow of funding and removing regulatory barriers to relief efforts are important tools for the governor and the legislature to have, and we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Cole.
Thank you, Senator Leno and members. My name is Bob Giroux, and I'm representing the San Diego County Water Authority today. We are in support of the package. We applaud the governor and the legislative leadership for their swift action. San Diego, much like what Senator Jackson said about southern Santa Barbara County, has no choice other than to ship water in or come up with other innovative ways to have drinking water. So we are currently constructing a desalination plant in northern San Diego County. We have several shovel-ready projects that would help with drought relief. And are happy to support the bill and do whatever it takes to pass it along.
Thank you, Mr. Giroux.
Good morning, Chairman Leno, members of the committee. My name is Randy Nodden with the City of Sacramento, somewhat ground zero to this drought. We support the bill in concept without a doubt. Our biggest concern, however, is very similar to Senator Jackson's concern in that if DWR uses its current system under the IRWM, that we won't get any further and the money won't go to the most impacted areas. We are able to calculate at this point if the money is distributed through the existing kind of program, it's done by population, and for the entire region from Sacramento to the Oregon border, we're looking about $17 to $20 million, which is not going to get us through this, and there's communities in our region who are dependent on Folsom Lake, and obviously those are very close to sucking air, as they say. So we would request that the same kind of consideration that Senator Bell's talking about for these emergency, where it's needed most system is put into that thought process as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nodden.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Dominic Damari on behalf of the Northern California Water Association and other pre-1914 water rights holders, and I am one of the people that Senator Berryhill referred to as being spending quality time in the governor's office yesterday. My clients were concerned about the provisions of AB 80 specifically impinging upon the water rights of pre-1914 water rights holders or otherwise allowing regulatory activities that heretofore haven't been allowed in that particular area of law for pre-14 water rights holders. Our concerns have been assuaged by the amendments that you see before you today. We want to thank the administration and the State Water Resources Control Board for their willingness to sit at the table, hear our concerns, and then be responsive to our concerns. It was a very constructive dialogue and is indicative of the cooperation that the administration has shown water managers across the state relative to the drought. So we're very pleased with the outcome. Thank you.
Glad to hear it, Mr. Damari. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. Mark Fenstermaker here on behalf of California Trout and the Trouts Unlimited in support. We appreciate the gravity of the situation and that the legislature and the administration has moved quickly to provide emergency funding for communities and agencies that have been hardest hit by the drought, as well as some modest funding for fish and stream conservation activities that will help those fish and their habitat that have been negatively impacted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Pablo Garza on behalf of the Nature Conservancy. We are also in support of the package. And pleased to see a series of immediate actions to benefit communities across the state, as well as the provisions for groundwater funding and funding to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Happy to support.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Craig Johns. I'm here today on behalf of Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District. The district is in support of the package and supports the governor's and the legislative leaders' efforts to try to deal with this situation as quickly as possible. We produce about 150 million gallons a day of recycled water, and we're anxious to try to get that into areas where it can be used, not just for the drought relief situation, but also for longer-term sustainability here in the region. We do share some of the concerns that Ms. Knott raised on behalf of the City of Sacramento, however, relative to making sure that as much as possible this package can get into the hands of those who are here at Ground Zero. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johns.
Chairman Leno, Senators, good morning. David Rabbit, the chair of the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, also the chair of the Sonoma County Water Agency, and actually also the chair of the North Bay Water Reuse Authority, a 3-county, 10 jurisdictions that are working on recycled water in the North Bay. We applaud the administration's efforts going forward, support the measures in front of you, and understand the need for immediate drought relief and longer-term infrastructure improvements to help provide a more resilient water supply system to address the next drought, which, like earthquakes in California, we know will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rabbit. We're well aware you've got some very thirsty communities in Sonoma County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Wendy Ritterbush with the Association of California Water Agencies. We don't have a position yet on the bill. The bills obviously are changing and still being amended. We think that they're moving in the right direction. What we want to let you know is we're going to continue to successfully partner with the Department of Water Resources on the Save Our Water program and website. We're really focusing on activities and messaging on the drought. We're also working very closely with local, state, and federal agencies with respect to the drought. And while we think this is probably a very significant short-term investment, we're going to continue to work on a long-term investment called a water bond.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak in public comment? Appreciate your contribution today. Colleagues, we do have a motion for both AB 79 and 80 as amended, and we will call the roll.
AB 79, Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen. Anderson. Bell. Bell, aye. Berryhill. Block. Aye. Block, aye. Corbett. Aye. Corbett, aye. Hancock. Hancock, aye. Jackson? Aye. Jackson, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Roth? Aye. Roth, aye. Torres? Aye. Torres, aye. It's 10.
We have 10 votes on AB 79, which is sufficient. I'm going to ask, without objection, we'll use the same roll call for AB 80 as amended, and we will hold the roll open for a few moments because I know there are a few members who would like to add on, but our job is done today. Thank you, colleagues.